Hello there. We are back at it again, and please, if you are joining me this morning or afternoon or evening, please share the broadcast. Invite your friends, invite your not so friendly friends, and tell them we're about to start again. Oh yeah, okay, we can work something out. Baba, you need to go and join the Telegram of the Yoruba Union. Somebody want to link up with Olowo. Join Yoruba Union at this, and then you'll be able to get in touch with him. That's the closest. Thank you so much, everyone. We are back to the reading. We are almost done, by the way, and we are starting early today, so we're almost done. I don't think we have up to 100 pages anymore. No, we don't have up to that. So we are starting early today, and from what we had the last time, for those of you who have been following, right, please share this. And if you have not been following, this is us continuing from chapter 8 of A Fatherless People, the secret story of how the Nigerians missed the road to the promised land. So, without wasting any much of our time, I think we should get down to it. This is post-independence. This was after they have finally orchestrated the, the northern elites, the northern oligarchy to take over power in Nigeria, even when they did not want to. So all of this, the machination of the British, again, for those of us who are listening or who have been following, the purpose of us reviewing or reading this book and the history, who we were before we were forced to be Nigeria. Your time, all the dedicated time listening, from the time when we started to now, I will continue to urge you. Reading this book is not to reignite whatever hatred, whatever division, whatever things that a lot of you have sort of harbored for so long. This is not an effort to bring them back to life. It is for you to understand them. And at the same time, understand who you are, respect who you are. And in that regard, you will respect others for who they are too. And this is the understanding this history is meant to bring. This is not, you see, hating one another or reigniting or revalidating why you hated this or that tribe. It's never going to help you. In fact, hating the British because of this history is also not going to help us. The fact that we can understand better simply means it will be very foolish of us to continue to enforce a creation that is totally false. That's the purpose of reading this book. Understanding who we are and stop the identity crisis. How did you come to become Rivers, Ogun? How did you become Sokoto? And how did you become Delta? All this creation and the purpose behind them is why we are reading this book. So that we will know better. And as you know better, you are expected to do better. In my own opinion. So we will continue now. The last page we were was page 234. So this was after Balewa had been installed as the prime minister, and the whole effort of stopping Awolowo from establishing a coalition with Azikiwe that could have possibly changed the trajectory of Nigeria today. So all of this are, stuff we've covered already. So let's continue. So I will start from where Awolowo's efforts were acknowledged. So anyway, give me 1 sec, just for us to be very sure that you can all hear me loud and clear. Let's continue. Awolowo's efforts to build an alliance with the East were doomed to failure because the North, with the support of the British Colonial Office, had its own strategies to ensure that that alliance would never happen. So from that moment onward, to close that part, here is the last chapter, I mean the last paragraph. What followed over the 10 years following independence was determined action to neutralize the threat to northern rule by the use of the army, spawning the Western region political crisis of 1962 and the military occupation of the region, the treason trial of 1963, leading to the imprisonment of the main political actors in the Southwest, the uprising in the TV division, leading to the military occupation of that area from 1964, the political crisis in the Western region in 1965, leading to a virtual civil war in that region, the first military coup in January 1966, the military counter coup of July 1966, and the Biafran War of 1967, leading to the military conquest of Biafra in January 1970, the 1962 Western region crisis. Balewa's appeal for national unity was an easy one for him to make. It was in reality the offer of a poisoned chalice. For Awolowo, it posed a dilemma. If the action group rejected the hand that the NPC was offering, it would be labeled unpatriotic. If it accepted it, its message for future electoral contests against the NPC would be compromised. The problem, as Awolowo saw it, was not going into an alliance for the sake of national unity per se, but going into an alliance with the NPC. Awolowo wrote, "When I delivered my lecture in London, one of the students asked me whether I could work under Balewa. And I said, I could not, because both of us do not operate on the same wavelength. I opposed the participation of my party in a national government because I felt that such participation would mean the disappearance of the opposition, which in the view of Democrats is the soul of democracy. I will not take office under Balewa at any time. If the prime minister had been Dr. Azikiwe, I would gladly work under him. I will not work under the Sadauno. He is the fountain of authoritarian rule in the north and of oppression in Nigeria," Awolowo said in one of his lectures in London. The problem for Awolowo was that there were some within his party who were keen not to miss out on this first opportunity to taste power. There was also the thinking There was also the thinking that if action group members joined the national government, they would have the opportunity to build closer relationships with the NCNC and woo them from within. The compromise between opportunity and principle, which Awolowo thought he had, and Ayorosiji, the then federal secretary, which Awolowo thought he had found rather, was to put forward Samuel Akintola, the then deputy leader of the action group, and Ayorosiji, the then federal secretary to the party, to join the Balewa-led coalition government, whereupon they became federal ministers. It proved a fatal move, as the NPC was now presented with an opportunity to groom these action group members of the national coalition government to open up the divide between Awolowo's camp and Akintola and his followers. Enahoro explained the divide as follows. Ever since Independence Day, debates had raged within the party over the future of the Western region and of the party. Some members wanted the action group to join an all-party coalition government at the center. Others suggested that the Western region should secede from the federation. Some that the party should seek accord with the NCNC, others with the NPC. In the end, two schools of thought predominated. The one led by Chiefs Akintola and Rusiji leaned towards the NPC and desired to join a national coalition at any cost. And the other, led by Chief Awolowo and myself, Enahoro, preferred the NCNC and suggested what became known as a progressive front, comprising the NCNC, Action Group, NEPU, NEPU, and UMBC. As the crisis within the party grew, attempts were made to reconcile the irreconciliables, but deeper currents were at work, as Awolowo himself put it. Chief Akintola's chief complaint at the meeting for settlement in February 1962 was that I made unfavorable reference to the advisability of the action group participating in the national government. I never wanted national government because I felt it would spell the doom of the opposition and consequently of parliamentary democracy. In order, however, to please the Obas and Chief Akintola and those who shared his views, I interviewed the Prime Minister, Sir Abubakar, on the 6th of April, 1962, to discuss with him the possibility of the action group participating in the national government. Up till that day, though Sir Abubakar had always expressed his preference for a national government in the press and the public, and to Chief Akintola and Chief Rosiji, he had never thought it fit to mention it to me. In May 1962, the party moved to charge Akintola with disloyalty and anti-party activities. Although he had pleaded guilty to the charges and apologized for his conduct, he refused to step down from his position as premier and deputy leader. When a petition to remove him from the post was acceded to by the standing governor of the Western region, Akintola commenced High Court proceedings claiming that he had the support of the majority of the members of the Western Region House of Assembly. A meeting of that assembly, called by the party to test his claim, turned into fracas, which Enahoro narrated as follows. When the House met on 25th May 1962, Chief Awolowo and I were sitting in the distinguished guests box behind Mr. Speaker. Supporters of Chief Akintola and the NCNC, who were at that time indisputably the minority, commenced a fight in the chamber. NCNC members marched across the floor and waded into action group members. One NCNC supporter lifted mace from its place of rest and tried to hit Mr. Speaker, but missing him, smashed it on the table and broke it. A minister, Kesintin Momo, was struck on the head with a sharp instrument and bled freely. The NPC-NCNC government quickly rushed to suspend democracy in the Western region by declaring a state of emergency on 29th May 1962. Enahoro continued. So within 4 days of the rioters' assembly at Ibadan, the federal government had suspended the Western government and legislature, adopted a mass of stringent regulations, appointed an administrator, and restricted leading politicians. Had it all been arranged long beforehand, with a question mark? The federal government was not accustomed to such speed. From this point forward, the Western region was effectively under military occupation by a Nigerian army composed principally of northern troops under the overall command of a British officer. The region will remain under military occupation until the Biafran War. Wow. Do you know that I never knew that it was that long? I knew about the state of emergency declared in the Western region by Tafawa Balewa. I never knew until the Biafran War, Yoruba land was under the northern military occupation. Now I know. But let's continue. Breaking up the action group's political base. The British stand against the creation of new states ahead of independence had forced the issue to return later with greater force and under an administration with far less moral authority to deal with it. It is not exaggeration to say that all the post-independence crisis in Nigeria can be traced back to these decisions because, left in the hands of the three dominant ethnic groups, the issue of the creation of new states simply became a political weapon for use in emasculating rival regions. The creation of new states had been one of the key, potentially vote-winning policies being pushed by the action group in the territory of both the North and the East. With the Western region being the least heterogeneous of the three regions, the Edo people being the only significant minority group, it had been an easy policy for the party to push. In contrast, the East had many minority groups, and the North had even more. Especially in the Middle Belt area. The action group saw in the policy the prospect of cutting the North down to size by undermining the One North policy. To this end, It built close relationship with the Christian TV in the Middle Belt and with the Muslim Kanuri in the Northeast. Both groups who were known to defend their independence from the Hausa Fulani. One more, the NPC with the support of the British Colonial Office and its NCNC allies were to beat the action group to the punch. Had the colonial government responded to the demand for the creation of new states, it would have been hard-pressed not to do something in each of the three regions equally. It would not have carved a new Midwest state out of the Western region without taking similar measures in the Eastern and Northern regions, especially since the Western region was the smallest and least heterogeneous of the three. But a new Nigerian coalition government made up of an alliance of the Eastern and Northern regions could do precisely that. It was telling that the act to create the Midwest region and effectively break up the Western region was published by the federal government on 24th May 1962, the eve of the crucial meeting in the Western Region House of Assembly, on the back of which a state of emergency in the region was declared. The state of emergency in Tifi country. The treatment given by the NPC NCNC government to the Tifi minority in the northern region, who were allies of the Western region, could not have been more different from the new region that had just been created for the Midwesterners. Due to this mountainous terrain, due to their mountainous terrains and their fighting spirits, the TV had never been easy to conquer. The British found the task difficult, and the Fulani found it impossible. Now that the British were leaving the TV, the TV were deeply hostile to the idea of being handed over to Fulani rule as part of the One North policy. Being Christians within the predominantly Muslim North, they felt their minority status twice over. The action group's policies towards minorities, and specifically the party's proposal of a Middle Belt state to be carved out of the North, had an obvious appeal to the TV. For this reason, the United Middle Belt Congress, UMBC, under the leadership of Joseph Tarka, became a close ally of the action group. In the MPC's calculation, this was a dangerous liaison, which, if not attacked, had the potential to give the action group a bridgehead into the North, with nothing to offer the Tifi to rival the action group's proposed Middle Belt states. The solution adopted was to frustrate the democratic aspiration of the UMBC with the aid of Tifi traditional rulers on the native authority. The trouble had started in the run-up to the November 1959 independence election. By the time the first explosion came in August 1960, the UMBC supporters in the TV division had exhausted their patience and tolerance for the local functionaries of the NPC regime. The government, having made it impossible for legitimate opposition voices to be heard, made itself vulnerable to violent aggression. Those targeted were the clan and kindred heads, court presidents and members, tax collectors, and generally known supporters of the NPC. The 1960 uprising, which first began in Yandev near Boko, soon spread like wildfire to other parts of TV divisions. The response of the NPC NCNC government to the uprising was ruthless. It dissolved the native authority and imposed collective punishment on all TVs by requiring every adult male to pay reparations for the riot damage. The failure of the same NPC and CNC government that had carved the Midwest state out of the Western region to redress the TV grievance in the same way led to a heightened sense of grievance. This, coupled with the arrest and imprisonment on charges of treason of the UMBC leader, Joseph Tarka, led to a bloodier uprising in 1964. The Balewa government's response was to send the army in. Of course, this was not the first time the army would be deployed to TV's division since independence. But the November 18, 1964 order was the first time when a massive military force involving a whole battalion, 3 Nigerian Army, including the Reese Squadron, was being mobilized for an internal security operation. Troops were never withdrawn again thereafter until the outbreak of the Civil War. And then dance with the remnants of the West. The final act in the NPC-NCNC Balewa Azikiwe government's systematic dismantling of the threat from the Western region was the announcement on 17th November 1962, 17th September rather, 1962, that the police had uncovered a plot to overthrow the government. Awolowo, Enahoro, and the TV political leader, Joseph Tarka, were now charged with treason. Tarka's position was remarkable. Just months before, in June 1961, he had been acquitted of a separate charge of treason against what had been the government of northern Nigeria. Fate smiled on him again as he was acquitted of all charges. His co-accused, Awolowo and Enahoro, were sentenced to prison for 10 and 12 years, respectively. After the Supreme Court dismissed their appeals on the 1st July 1964, what was expected to be a long period of forced removal from the political stage began for Awolowo and Enahoro. This, what seemed at first their misfortune, turned out to be good fortune, as their incarceration at the time of the first military coup in January 1966 perhaps saved their lives when other political leaders were murdered. At the same time, their survival contributed to giving the coup the coloration of an anti-North plot. In the meanwhile, the action group stood decapitated. When the state of emergency in the Western region was lifted in January 1964, instead of the NPC-NCNC alliance government directing new elections, it simply appointed Akintola as premier in succession to Awolowo in a new administration made up of Akintola's followers and members of the Western branch of the NCNC. Awolowo's action group, which had been the official opposition to the NPC-NCNC alliance, had effectively ceased to exist. The battle of the count. The next round of federal elections, scheduled for December 1964, were to be the first that Nigerians would be conducting for themselves. With the action group decapitated and effectively neutralized. It was looking like a two-way contest between NPC and the NCNC, with the NPC controlling the northern region and NCNC now controlling almost the whole of southern region after winning the February 1964 elections in the new Midwest states. The omens for free elections were never good. Both former alliance partners, NPC and NCNC, had benefited from the rigged independence elections. Each understood the importance of the census, since seats in the federal parliament were to be apportioned according to the population of each region.